The fridge stood empty, but the cupboard never did. Behind that little wooden door in every post-war British kitchen sat the real safety net. Tins stacked like soldiers, a bag of flour, a packet of suet, an OXO cube wrapped in foil, a half-used jar of jam. When wages ran thin and payday felt a week away, your Nan never panicked. She reached into that cupboard and conjured a hot dinner out of almost nothing. These were the meals that fed Britain through rationing, strikes, and the long, hungry wait until Friday. Cheap, filling, and quietly clever. Today we are counting down 25 cupboard dinners your Nan made when the fridge was bare. Stay with us, because number 1 fed entire streets. Let us begin our countdown with number 25. Number 25. Sugar sandwiches sat at the very bottom of the British cupboard, the meal of last resort when even the bread bin was running low. Mothers buttered a slice of plain white, scattered a spoonful of granulated sugar across it, and pressed a second slice on top. The sugar would crunch between the teeth, dissolving into the butter, a treat so simple it cost less than a penny a round. By the early 1950s, when a £2 loaf was just 11p, the sugar sandwich was the thing a child was handed to. Silence a grumbling stomach before tea. Diaries from the era recall it plainly, a butty when there was nothing else, eaten on the back step while the kettle boiled. It was never proud food, but it kept hunger at bay, and for many it remains the first taste of childhood, sweet and gritty, and gone in 3 bites. Number 24. OXO and hot water, known in many homes simply as beef tea, warmed the smallest budgets of all. When there was no meat in the house and the cupboard held little else, your Nan crumbled a single OXO cube into a mug, poured boiling water over it, and stirred until the dark liquid steamed. A box of 12 cubes cost about £1 and lasted weeks, making this the cheapest hot meal in Britain. Served with a torn hunk of bread to dip, it carried the faint, salty memory of beef without a scrap of the real thing. Invalids drank it for strength. Children drank it on cold mornings before the walk to school. Fathers took it in a flask to the early shift. It filled no stomach for long, but it offered warmth and the comforting illusion of a proper dinner, conjured from one foil-wrapped cube and a kettle. Number 23. Condensed milk on bread turned the sweetest tin in the cupboard into a quick and cheerful supper. Mothers spread cold, thick carnation condensed milk straight from the tin onto a slice of bread, the pale gold ooze settling into every pore of the crumb. A tin cost around 9p, and once opened with a knife, it lasted for ages on the shelf. For children it was pure luxury, the closest thing to a pudding on a weeknight when money was tight. Oral histories recall fingers scraping the rim of the tin, the sticky race to finish before it dripped off the edge. Some homes drizzled it over stale cake or a leftover scone instead. It was sugar and fat and comfort in one spoonful. A reminder that even in the leanest weeks, a child could be sent to bed feeling, for a moment, spoiled. Number 22. Jam sandwiches anchored countless tea times when the meat plate stood empty. Mothers spread a thin, careful layer of red jam, often homemade from a glut of plums or blackberries, across buttered bread and cut it into neat triangles. A jar of jam cost pennies and lasted the best part of a month, making it the workhorse of the cupboard. The trick was restraint, a scrape rather than a slather, so the jar might see the family through to the next pay packet. Children pressed the slices together and watched the jam ooze pink at the edges, licking it from their fingers. Diaries from the 1950s record jam sandwiches packed in greaseproof paper for school dinners and picnics alike. Humble, sweet, and endlessly reliable. The jam sandwich was the taste of making do with a smile, a small daily kindness that asked almost nothing of the purse. Number 21, fried bread, brought a hot, golden supper from nothing but a stale loaf and a spoon of fat. When the cupboard held little but yesterday's bread, your nan heated dripping or lard in the pan until it shimmered, then laid in slices that hissed and crisped to a deep amber. The bread drank up the fat, turning rich and crunching at the edges, somehow more satisfying than fresh. A loaf cost 11 pence and the dripping was free, saved from Sunday's roast. Served with a smear of brown sauce or a fried egg if one could be spared, fried bread was the breakfast that doubled as tea on the hardest days. Oral histories recall the smell filling the scullery, the children waiting with plates, and the quiet understanding that stale bread was never thrown away. It was thrift turned crisp and golden, a small daily triumph over an empty larder. Number 20. Tinned tomato soup with bread carried whole families through the cold middle of the week. Mothers tipped a tin of Heinz cream of tomato into a pan, sometimes stretching it with a little milk or water, and heated it until it bubbled a deep, glossy red. A tin cost around 9 pence and could feed 3 or 4 with enough bread torn in. The ritual was the dipping. Doorstep slices were plunged into the bowl until they turned soft and orange and were lifted dripping to the mouth. Children stirred swirls of milk across the surface and watched them bloom. The smell, sweet and faintly metallic, meant warmth on a grey afternoon when the rain hammered the windows. It was never grand, but it was hot, and it filled the room with steam and the children with comfort. For a few pence, a single tin became a supper. Nobody complained about. Number 19, beans on toast became the most beloved cupboard dinner Britain ever knew. A tin of Heinz baked beans, warmed in the pan until the orange sauce thickened, tipped over 2 slices of buttered toast, was a meal a child could almost make alone. By the 1960s, beans were a fixture in nearly every British cupboard, a tin costing only a few pence and feeding 2 at a pinch. The beans soaked into the toast at the corners, where the bread turned soft and saucy, while the middle stayed crisp. Mothers grated a little cheese on top when they could, or cracked an egg alongside for a feast. Oral histories recall it as the supper of choice when nobody had the energy to cook, the after-school standby, the bachelor's salvation. Cheap, hot, and ready in minutes, beans on toast asked nothing and gave everything. It remains the dish that defines the British store cupboard to this day. Number 18, tinned spaghetti on toast offered the same comfort, with a sweeter, softer twist. Mothers emptied a tin of spaghetti and tomato sauce into the pan, heated it through, and heaped it onto buttered toast, where it slithered and steamed. A tin cost around 10 pence, and was a staple of the cupboard from the late 1950s onward, when continental pasta still seemed exotic, and the tin made it safe and familiar. Children loved the tangle of soft orange strands, the way they hung off the fork and slapped against the chin. It was the sort of supper handed over on a tray in front of the television, or ladled out fast before a shift. Some homes topped it with a sprinkle of grated cheese that melted into strings. Soft, sweet, and unfailingly cheap, tinned spaghetti was childhood comfort poured straight from the larder onto a slice of toast. Number 17, cheese on toast, or proper Welsh rarebit in the homes that did it well, turned a heel of cheese into a hot and savoury supper. The simplest version was a slice of cheese laid on bread and slid under the grill until it bubbled and browned at the edges. The cleverer cooks made it the old way, mixing grated cheese with a splash of milk, a shake of mustard, and a few drops of Worcestershire sauce into a paste before grilling. A wedge of cheese stretched a long way, and the toast beneath cost mere pennies. The smell of grilling cheese filled the kitchen, sharp and rich, drawing children to the table. Oral histories recall the race to eat it, while the top still blistered and the center ran molten. It was the supper for a cold night when the cupboard was nearly empty, but a scrap of cheese remained, and it never disappointed. Number 16. Sardines on toast pulled protein from the back of the cupboard when fresh fish was out of reach. A tin of sardines in oil or tomato sauce, mashed roughly with a fork and spread over hot buttered toast, made a quick and nourishing tea for a few pence. Sardines were among the cheapest tinned fish in Britain, kept in every prudent cupboard as insurance against a lean week. The oil soaked into the toast, the soft bones mashed invisibly into the flesh, and a crack of black pepper or a squeeze of vinegar lifted the whole thing. Some homes did the same with tinned pilchards, larger and stronger in flavor. Children either loved it or fled the smell entirely, but parents knew it was good food, rich and filling, conjured from a tin that cost less than a loaf. Sardines on toast was thrift with a backbone of real sustenance. Number 15. Tinned pilchards in tomato sauce stretched even further than their sardine cousins, feeding a family from a single flat tin. Mothers tipped the large pinkish fish and their thick tomato sauce into a pan, warmed them through, and served them over mashed potato or toast. A tin cost around 9p and could feed 3 or 4 when bulked out with bread and potato. The flavor was strong, oily, and unmistakable, the sort of smell that announced supper through the whole house and lingered in the curtains afterward. Oral histories recall pilchards as wartime and post-war insurance, the tin that sat at the back of every cupboard for the week when nothing else remained. Loved by fathers, tolerated by children, the pilchard was honest food. It carried omega oils and protein into homes that could afford little else, a humble silver fish doing the work of a Sunday joint for a fraction of the price. Number 14. Egg and chips needed nothing but the contents of a well-kept larder and a pan of hot fat. A few potatoes, peeled and cut into thick chips, fried until golden in dripping or lard, with 1 or 2 eggs slipped into the same pan to crisp at the edges and run gold in the middle. Potatoes were the cheapest thing in any cupboard, and eggs, when the hens were laying or the ration allowed, turned them into a proper meal. The smell of frying filled the kitchen, the chips hissing as they browned, the egg whites bubbling and lacing. Children dipped chips into the soft yolk and mopped the plate clean. Oral histories recall egg and chips as the Friday treat, the simple supper that felt like a feast. Cheap, hot, and endlessly satisfying, it was proof that 2 of the humblest larder staples could make one of the happiest plates in Britain. Number 13. Potato cakes turned cold leftover mash into a fresh, hot supper that cost almost nothing. Mothers worked flour into yesterday's mashed potato, sometimes with a knob of butter and a pinch of salt, rolled it flat, cut it into rounds, and fried them on a griddle or in a dry pan until they blistered and browned. A few pence of potatoes and a handful of flour made a plateful. The cakes came off the pan crisp outside and fluffy within, served with butter melting into them, or alongside whatever scrap of bacon or egg the house could spare. In Ireland and the North, they were a tradition all their own, but every thrifty British kitchen knew the trick. Oral histories recall the satisfying sizzle and the way nothing, not even cold mash, was ever wasted. Potato cakes were the larder's quiet genius, a second life for the most ordinary leftover in the house. Number 12. Macaroni cheese fed a whole family from a bag of dried pasta and a corner of cheese. Mothers boiled the macaroni soft, stirred it into a white sauce made from flour, butter, and milk, folded in every last scrap of grated cheese, then baked it until the top turned golden and crisp. Dried macaroni kept for months in the cupboard and cost very little, while the sauce stretched a small piece of cheese across 4 hungry plates. The dish emerged from the oven, bubbling at the edges, a crust of browned cheese giving way to soft, creamy pasta beneath. Children fought over the crispy corners. Oral histories recall it as the standby of the meatless day, filling and rich enough that nobody noticed the absence of meat. Topped sometimes with breadcrumbs or sliced tomato, macaroni cheese was the cupboard's answer to comfort, a warm and golden supper coaxed from flour, milk, and a heel of cheddar. Number 11. Spam fritters carried the taste of the tinned meat years into the heart of the family supper. A block of spam, sliced thick, dipped in a simple flour and water batter, and fried until the coating turned crisp and golden, made a hot and hearty plate for pennies a portion. Spam arrived by the shipload during and after the war, and never quite left the British cupboard, a tin that kept for years and asked nothing of the fridge. The fritters came out of the pan sizzling, the batter shattering to reveal the salty pink meat inside, served with chips and a spoon of beans. Children loved the crunch. Oral histories recall spam fritters as the chip shop treat and the home-cooked standby alike, a meal that turned cheap tinned meat into something that felt indulgent. Salty, crisp, and reliably filling, the spam fritter was wartime ingenuity that families simply refused to give up. Number 10. Corned beef hash brought the global pantry to the British table when fresh meat was a luxury. Mothers opened a blue-labeled tin of corned beef, shipped in its thousands of tons from Argentina, and fried the dense pink meat with diced potato and onion until the bottom caught and crisped into a savory crust. A tin cost around $1 and could stretch to feed 5. The hash sizzled in the pan, the corned beef breaking into salty shreds, the potato soaking up the fat and the flavor. Some homes topped it with a fried egg or a splash of brown sauce. Oral histories recall corned beef as the cupboard's insurance, the tin that sat untouched until the week the money ran short, and then fed the whole family. Crisp, salty, and deeply filling, corned beef hash was the meal that turned a single tin into a proper hot supper, no fridge required. Number 9. Tinned peas and mash made a complete green and white supper from 2 of the cheapest things in the house. Mothers heated a tin of processed peas, that vivid municipal green, and spooned them beside a mound of buttery mashed potato, sometimes with a knob of dripping or a splash of the pea liquor poured over. Marrow fat and processed peas kept indefinitely in the tin and cost a few pence, while potatoes were always to hand. The peas were soft and sweet and faintly mushy, the mash smooth and rich, and together they filled a plate and a stomach for next to nothing. On better weeks, a sausage or a slice of fried spam joined them. Oral histories recall it as the supper of the very lean Thursday, the meal before payday when imagination ran as short as money. Simple to the point of plainness, peas and mash was honest, hot, and always enough. Number 8. Bubble and Squeak gave Sunday's leftovers a second and better life. Mothers gathered the cold mashed potato and the leftover greens, often cabbage, from the weekend dinner, mashed them together, and fried the mixture in a hot pan until the underside caught and crisped into a deep brown crust. The name came from the sound, the vegetables hissing and squeaking as they hit the fat. It cost nothing beyond what was already saved, the very definition of cupboard thrift. Children either loved the smell of frying cabbage or wrinkled their noses at it, while fathers swore the crispy brown bits were the finest part. A spoon of bacon fat or a scrap of leftover meat made it a feast. Oral histories record it as the Monday ritual, the meal that wasted not a scrap of Sunday. Crisp, savory, and gloriously frugal, Bubble and Squeak turned the remnants of one dinner into the highlight of another. Number 7. Dripping toast spread the saved fat of the Sunday roast across a hot slice of bread and called it supper. Mothers kept a small bowl or jar of beef dripping in the cupboard, the pale fat capped with a darker, jellied, intensely savory layer at the bottom. Spread thick onto warm toast and finished with a pinch of salt, it carried the rich, meaty memory of the roast long after the joint itself was gone. The dripping was free, saved from cooking, and a loaf cost mere pennies, making this one of the cheapest hot meals imaginable. Oral histories recall children begging for the dark, jellied bottom of the jar, the most flavorful part of all. It was plain, unashamed comfort. A working family's supper on the nights when the fridge was bare and the cupboard nearly so. Dripping toast was thrift you could taste, salty and warm and deeply satisfying. Number 6. Peas pudding spread the contents of a humble tin or a bag of dried split peas across the whole week. Mothers either boiled yellow split peas long and slow with an onion until they collapsed into a smooth golden paste, or simply opened a tin of ready-made and heated it through. Either way, it cost a few pence and filled the plate. Thick, earthy, and faintly sweet, peas pudding was served hot beside a scrap of bacon or boiled ham, or spread cold on bread the next day. In the Northeast, it was a beloved tradition, sold by the ladleful in covered markets, but every careful cupboard kept it as a cheap source of protein. Oral histories recall the old rhyme and the way a single batch stretched across days. Dense enough to satisfy the hungriest worker, peas pudding was the larder's quiet protein, golden and filling, a meal coaxed from the cheapest pulse in the shop. Number 5. Mushy peas on toast, or alongside a fried slice, turned a humble tin into a proper green supper. Mothers heated marrow-fat peas, soaked and cooked down or tipped straight from the tin, until they thickened into that famous soft green sludge, seasoned with salt and a little sugar. A tin or a bag of dried marrow fats cost almost nothing and kept forever in the cupboard. Spooned over toast, piled beside chips, or eaten plain with a knob of butter and a splash of vinegar, mushy peas were filling, warm, and unmistakably British. The smell was earthy and comforting, the texture thick enough to hold a spoon upright. Oral histories recall mushy peas as the faithful companion to the chip supper and the standby of the meatless night alike. Cheap, green, and deeply satisfying, the mushy pea proved that one of the plainest things in the cupboard could anchor a whole hot meal for pennies. Number 4. Bread and butter pudding. Rescued the staling loaf and turned it into a warm, sweet supper that felt like a treat. Mothers buttered the dry ends and crusts, layered them in a dish with a scatter of currants or sultanas from the baking cupboard, poured over a mixture of milk, an egg, and a little sugar, and baked it until the top crisped golden and the inside set soft and custardy. It cost almost nothing, built entirely from bread that would otherwise be thrown away and a few cupboard staples. The scent of warm milk and nutmeg drifted through the house on a Sunday afternoon. Children waited for the crisp, sugary peaks on top and the soft, swollen fruit beneath. Oral histories recall it as the model of economy, the pudding that made virtue of waste. Served with a jug of custard, bread and butter pudding proved that thrift could taste like genuine indulgence, conjured from a stale loaf and a little imagination. Number 3. Jam roly-poly rolled out of the cupboard. As the king of the cheap hot pudding, mothers mixed flour and suet into a soft dough, rolled it flat, spread it thick with red jam, then rolled it tight and steamed or baked it until it swelled golden and the jam bubbled sticky at the ends. Flour, suet, and jam were all cupboard staples, costing pennies. Yet together, they made a pudding hefty enough to fill the hungriest child to the brim. The kitchen windows fogged with steam as it cooked, the smell warm and sweet. Sliced thick and drowned in a pool of yellow custard, jam roly-poly was the reward at the end of a lean week. Oral histories recall the school dinner cheers and groans, the contest over second helpings, the spiral of red jam in every slice. Dense, sweet, and gloriously cheap, the roly-poly turned 3 cupboard basics into a celebration on the plate. Number 2. Suet dumplings dropped into a thin gravy or a watery stew turned almost nothing into a meal that fortified a working family. When the cupboard held little more than flour, suet, and an oxo cube, mothers mixed the flour and suet with a splash of water into a stiff dough, rolled it into balls, and dropped them into simmering stock made from a crumbled cube. The dumplings swelled as they cooked, soaking up the savory liquid, the pot lid rattling as the steam built. Flour and suet cost only pennies a pound, making this the calorie workhorse of the lean kitchen, a way to fill 6 bellies when there was scarcely any meat to be had. The dumplings came out soft and heavy, dense enough to silence the hungriest child and warm the coldest worker. Oral histories recall the gentle rattle of the lid as the signal that supper, however humble, was nearly ready. Few dishes stretched so little into so much. And finally, in first place, the humble bread and milk, or pobs as many knew it, crowned the cupboard list as the meal that fed entire streets through the hardest nights. When there was nothing else at all, mothers tore stale bread into a bowl, poured over warm milk, and added a sprinkle of sugar or a knob of butter to soften and sweeten it. Bread and milk were the last 2 things any home held, and even those were sometimes shared between neighbors when one family ran shorter than the next. The bread swelled soft and warm, the milk turned faintly sweet, and a hot, filling bowl appeared from the barest cupboard imaginable. Oral histories recall it as the supper of the very poorest weeks. The meal handed to children before bed so no one slept hungry, the bowl shared over a fence when a neighbor's cupboard was barer still. It was the taste of community and survival, the very bottom of the larder turned by warmth and kindness into comfort. From the sugar sandwich that opened our list to the humble bowl of bread and milk at the very top, these cupboard dinners tell the story of a Britain that wasted nothing and made do with everything. Tinned fish, dried peas, stale bread, and a single oxo cube turned up again and again, the quiet heroes of the lean week. They were not grand, but they were warm, and they kept the family fed when the fridge stood empty, and payday felt a lifetime away. Which of these did your nan make? Tell me in the comments. And if this brought the old kitchen back to life, you know what to do. Your nan knew how to fill a plate from nothing. Now you do too.